Hello everybody, this is Jason from the Game Warrior, and I am so excited to be talking to you about Oathsworn. Yep, I was hiding. I think you knew where I was though, didn't you? Some little rat, painted him up. Got two of the characters painted, got the rats, the little rats. Okay everybody, so what is this video? This is a first impressions review-ish, so it's not a big review, it's just mostly me talking to you about the game. And so we're just going to go over some of the fun stuff together, and I'm going to show you a little bit about the game. If you don't have your game, and by the way, I know some of you still do not, and I have a second copy coming, so I still haven't gotten that one, even though I've been pestering them, but they tell me it's coming. I'm not going to spoil anything, but we're just going to talk about it. Now, they have a Kickstarter coming up. I think it's October 18th, so this video might be useful to you as you consider whether to back it. Now, from what I understand, this is a pretty popular game. I've got a little bit in, and I can tell you some of the cool parts about it, but it's getting some buzz. It's positive. Now, if you were around while I was talking to you about Bard Song, you know that kind of fizzled for me. I don't know, we'll see if this fizzles, but just starting out right now, it's been pretty fun and pretty cool. So, as always, I welcome your comments. Type me long letters, I will reply. I love having conversations with you on YouTube. Okay, so what is this game? Let's talk about that from the beginning. Let's just frame it as the very first thing is, what is this game? So this game is a campaign. It's a cooperative campaign, and it's been created by a guy named Jamie Jolly, and the company is called Shadowborn Games. And they even have something called a Twisting Tales game. Not sure what that means, but that's okay. So this is kind of what some people call a dungeon crawl, but it's not really. It's not really, and I'll tell you why. What it is that you are going to take and look at these miniatures. These miniatures are really awesome. One of the best parts about them is that they're big. You can see most miniature scales would be smaller, and I'll show you closer up views of those in a little bit. But for right now, you take a character, and we all work together. There's 4 players on the team, and it plays with 1 to 4 players. It doesn't matter. There's no need for a solo mode. But how that does that is that no matter how many player count you have, 4 players. That's it. You get 4, and you have to take 4. Now they do have a cool mechanic that allows you to, if I took this bear and I was playing by myself, I would still have to have 3 more characters. It's the way the game is balanced. If you're familiar with a game like Gloomhaven, if you are, it's got a mechanic built in so that if you play with 1 player, it works. If you play with 2, it gets harder. 3, it gets harder. 4, it gets harder. It just doesn't matter. It adjusts itself. This game does not adjust itself. That's fine. You have to take the 4. To mitigate that, they create something called companions. So there's characters and companions. And companions are simplified versions of the characters. So if I were to play solo, I might take this bear, okay, which is very popular, it's like a tank, and then I'd have to take 3 other characters and I'd have to run them, but I would take the companion versions. And those companion versions would just be a lot easier to run than a full character. I suppose I could play the first character all I wanted. I mean, all 4 as in deep, detailed characters. It would just be a lot to run, and I could understand why they created the companions. Okay, so to explain the game, you are 4 characters, and you're on an adventure, and it's a campaign. So what does a campaign mean for those of you who don't know? A campaign is a series of linked encounters that tells a story. So your characters are on an arc with a story. Now the way the game is created, that story is all over the place. It's like a pick your adventure kind of book. Do you remember those books? If you don't, there used to be books where you would go, you can go left or you can go right. If you go left, go to page 14. If you go right, go to page 89. Stuff like that. They were little novels. This game is that way. Okay? This game is that way. Now, the way it starts is it has 2 different phases. So there's 2 ways to play the game together. One is the story phase. So the story phase typically takes place in a city, or at least the beginning does. That's not a spoiler. It starts in a city. And you can go around in the city. You put your miniatures on the city. You actually only put one miniature to show the whole group. And it's called the Free Company. And you decide where you go. In each place you go, you read it. Or the companion app reads it for you. Does some voice acting, which is really nice. I'll talk to you about that later. And then in that area, you'll have some issues. You'll have some questions, riddles, things to get, decisions to make. And this is the story portion, and then you go somewhere else, and then you go somewhere else. So you do the story, and you explore the story in the first part. Now, there's sometimes combat there, but not a lot, okay? But there's repercussions. There's repercussions. Now, earlier, I'll tell you what those repercussions are right now. Hold on a sec. Earlier, I said this isn't a dungeon crawl. So a dungeon crawl, if you remember your old D&D games, or if you don't, let me explain it to you. It's where a group of adventurers go through a dungeon, a maze, or a wilderness, or a city, and they just explore. They just explore here, they explore there, they explore. And they open a door, they don't know what's in it. Could be a monster. Hopefully, it's got monsters to kill, treasure to gain, and some type of story beats that make it, add meaning. Plus, opportunities for your character to get more powerful. And that's dungeon crawls. That's dungeon crawls. And in the old days, for us who came from the D&D realms, there's a great nostalgic to it, just to going through, to opening doors, to solving puzzles, challenges, big combats. Okay? This game doesn't really do it. It's not a dungeon crawl. It has a story crawl where you make those decisions in a story, and then when that part is complete, you then go to the encounter. So from what I understand, there are 20 or 21 encounters, right? So in a typical video game or D&D game, you would explore rooms, build, fight monsters, fight minions, basically. You're fighting minions here, fighting minions there, a little bit here, a little bit there. And then in the end, you meet what is called the boss battler, right? So Oathsworn's kind of cool. What they did is they skipped the dungeon. They just skipped it. There's no dungeon. There's the story, it takes you here, there, and there, and there's repercussions. If you do the story well, you're going to gain power, you're going to be healthy, you might have some extra magic items, you might have some benefits to you in the encounter. And then the encounter starts, and it's just the boss battler. So the story is a surprise, and so I'm not going to do any spoilers, but everybody knows that the first boss battler is the rat, the same rat that's on there, on the cover, if you can see it. And so that's your first boss battler. Now, I took it out. I looked ahead at what the first box was, because the way they designed this is, and I'll show you this too, is in this box and this box. These are the mystery boxes. Each time you go through the story beats of the 20 chapters and you're done, it tells you go to this box. There's boxes in here. Take out the monsters, and it will tell you how to set up the encounter for the boss battle. So these battles are intricate. They're long. Took like an hour and a half, 2 hours. Some people said they even take longer, right? It's like a big puzzle to play. You've got your 4 characters, and you've got to work together. You've got to utilize your brains. You've got to use a little bit of luck, and you've got to find a way to defeat the boss. So if you're familiar with video games that have the big boss at the end, this game is just 20 or 21, I'm not sure, boss battles. Just boss battles. But it's told with some really good writing, and you can read it. I'll show you those books in a little bit. Or you could just listen to it on the app, and the app is pretty nice because they've got, so far, some really good voice acting. The games are getting really better at that, and I like it because if someone's reading it, invariably, invariably someone's reading and stumbling over the words, and you try to give it to your best person, but then someone else in the group wants to read. And I always find it's a little bit harder to read, pay attention, unless I'm the one reading it. If I'm reading it, I get more out of it than if I'm listening to someone else. But with the narration and the sound effects and the real professional quality, like everyone leans forward and everyone's immersed in it. It really works well for me. But you don't have to do it. You have the book. You can read it there. So that's the game. Like, I'm just going to go through 20 stories and solve those problems, challenges, issues, and then they're going to catapult me into a boss battle fight. a boss battle fight, and then my 4 characters or our group of 4 have to find a way to win, kill him or it or whatever it may be, because I don't know the other 19, right? I just know the rat. And then we'll move to the next story. So it's just going to go story, encounter, story, encounter. Now, here's one of the issues that the game brings up, and I've seen other people mention it too. Because these games, I haven't showed them to you, these 2 boxes are full of boxes that are labeled 1 through whatever. And so the story eventually will tell you, go get that box. When you open it up, well, it's not painted. So if you play the story one night and you play for an hour and you get the story done, and you go, okay, get that out. You take it out to boss battle it. Your miniature's not painted. Now, if you don't care, no problem. We care. We care. So what we've decided to do, and if the story keeps us alive. So far, opening scene, yes, it's big thumbs up on this game. But we'll see if it keeps going. But what we're going to do is we're going to do an encounter. When we kill the boss, then we're going to do a story in the same night. This is the way we're going to structure our nights. And the story will end with telling us which box and encounter comes next. And we'll take those monsters out, and we have a week till we meet again, Sunday nights, and someone in the group gets to paint the monster. So I think we'll always have a freshly painted monster, playing it a little backwards. Instead of story encounter, we're going to go encounter, story, and we'll be all storied up, ready for that boss battle, and we'll be thinking about it the whole week, and then whoever does the painting. Now, I did this painting, and my wife did the rats, and then she did her bear, and I did my harbinger. The other characters we took, and that's another video, we should probably go over the characters, but right now, the other characters were a huntress, I think, and an exile, like a barbarian and an archer, kind of. And our 2 friends took those miniatures home this last Sunday, and they'll be painting those, and we'll be back. And we're going to start it all over again. We're just going to do it over because there's no real tutorial, right? So I was just kind of messing around, learning with this battle and this story. So the first one's off to a little bit of a rough start. I mean, we fought the rat, but we were just messing around trying to learn the rules. And so that's where we're at. Okay, everybody, I hope I explained this game, this opening game, as in a way that makes you go, okay, was this useful? Like, is this interesting? Is this something I want? Hopefully I'm interesting to listen to too, right? Hopefully I'm just a fount of entertainment for you. If I'm not, then you probably should watch someone else, unless I'm just giving you good information. So the game has 2 major parts. It's a story. You take your 4 characters through the story, making decisions that matter, that tell a story. There's an overall story of some sort. I don't know what's going on right now. It's not as simple as, Frodo, get this ring to Mount Doom. And then there's the encounter. And they skip the dungeon crawl. They skip they just get in and go boss battle. Next 2 hours, you against this big monster. And so far, that's pretty cool. That's pretty cool. So far, I don't have a sense of going from door to door to door to door, but I do get one big surprise, right? I'm going through the story. Those are surprises. Those are interesting. And then what's that boss, right? That's the big, door. What's behind door number 1 is the boss. And you're like, whoa. And depending on how well you do in the story, you can get some information, right? Some information on this, a little bit that will help you tactically defeat it. Or if you really screw it up, you can walk into the boss battle and be surprised and ambushed by it, in which case things aren't going very well for you. So how you play in the story, it's fun. It's not just simple. It's not just do whatever. It's like you got to make some decisions. You got to make the right ones. And when you do, they will benefit you. And then you go into this boss battle. And then you just repeat that. Or if you do it a little odd ordered like we do, we go encounter, story. So that means we're going to have to do story, encounter, story in one night. It'll be a big night. And that'll be next Sunday. So that's when we're starting. And that's where it's at. I hope that sounds like something you're interested in. If it's not, obviously, don't follow it. Don't buy it. Don't get a secondhand copy. They do have a Kickstarter coming. They're doing a second printing of the whole thing. So far, I haven't heard of that Kickstarter offering that, second printing, offering anything new. I'm not even sure if it's cleaning up anything, if there's any errata. Like I just told you guys, I just got my Ether Fields second wave. I actually got everything in the second wave, so I just got my first game. But one good thing about that is that they kind of redesigned the game a little, and they made a totally new rule book, and they fixed it up and made it easier, less grindy from what I've heard. And so let's end with that. And this is a great discussion point if you're still with me. I appreciate it. A lot of the problem with dungeon crawls, which are fun, is the grind. It's like you've got to go through 10 encounters before you get to that boss and level up. And some of the encounters are just a fight. There's no story involved. There's not even much treasure. It's just get through this. And if that fighting isn't totally challenging and just exciting and really something that you love, it can get grindy. And what grind means is like, oh, I got to get through this to get to the story. And you start to think, and it's even worse if games have mechanics where if you die, you got to go back and repeat it. And then you're like, I don't want to do that. I don't want to go back and play that again. That was boring. I died. I don't want to do it again. So grind is a real thing. And I'm sure, I don't know how they handle grind here, but I do know that they avoid it for the most part because you only have one big boss battle. You just have the big boss battle. That's it. Win or lose, boss battle. And then the way it's structured, the rules have, even if you lose, you still go on in the story. Some other stuff happens. Some allies show up and save your butt. That's how they do it. Now there is a hardcore mode. Everybody knows nightmare hardcore modes in video games, right? If you don't, it means instead of going back to your last saved point, or instead of just restarting right where you were, which is what most video games have done now, it's over. You're dead. Like, oh, I got 0 hit points, I'm dead. Boom, dead. New character, out. Hardcore mode. So you can play it that way if you want. We probably won't play it that way. Our group of friends is me and my wife and a couple friends of ours, and they love games, and we love to be challenged, and we want to get our butts kicked sometimes. We want to be able to overcome, but it's also a lot of fun for us, and laughing and talking and challenging. Getting halfway through this campaign and then hitting a hardcore death and having to start all over, probably not going to happen. You know what would happen? Probably wouldn't continue playing. So I keep saying this is the final thing. I got one more thing for you. How many campaigns do you finish? So remember, if you don't know what I'm talking about with campaigns are a long series of linked adventures. Like you play Monopoly, right? It's the same Monopoly every time. Using Monopoly is a simple, but whatever. A game of chess is the same. It resets each time. This game isn't like that. What you did in the last game affects the next one, and then the next one, and then the next one. Some in the industry call them legacy games, but that's a different thing altogether. Let's just call them campaigns. Linked stories that have meaning, with one character that grows and grows and gets more powerful, gets more loot, and the story has more meaning to them. Okay? So here's the question I had. How many of you have ever finished a campaign? Right? Man, in the old days of D&D, we didn't finish too many. We finished some, right? And in board games, I finished less than I wish I had. That's why I sold Bard Song. Bard Song was another campaign that came recently that I got super excited about. I thought it was going to be my game, and it turned out that it was too grindy, and the rules were confusing, and so forth and so on, and I ended up selling it. So, will I end up selling this? Will I end up playing it? Will I go through the whole campaign, finish it, and then go? Because that's when the campaign's done, you're done with the game. So it won't be like, I'm looking at a whole bunch of games over there, like Nemesis I'm looking at right now, where we just pull out Nemesis and play a game of Nemesis. We love Nemesis until we get bored with it, right? But once this story's over, I'm guessing we will sell it unless we want to keep it for nostalgic value. Okay, everybody. Again, my name is Jason. If you don't know that, if I didn't introduce myself, I love hearing your comments. I love making fun of you. I love making fun of you. I love making friends and making fun of each other and having a lot of fun together. So until the next video, which I'll be filming right after this as we start to look at the components, this has been Jason from the Game Warrior, an introductory explanation, impression of the game Oathsworn Into the Deep Woods.